Really delighted to be welcoming David Montgomery. David, do you want to say a few words about yourself? Introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm David. I work at NYU, the program in educational theater. I've been the program director for over about 10 years. Um, I have three kids, a dog, a cat, and I live in Brooklyn, New York. Um, and I've had the honor and luck to work with Dorothy Heathcote um, pretty long time ago, 2006 and 2007, and to work with many other great facilitators, theorists like Cecily O'Neill, who has worked for NYU in many different capacities over the many years. So yeah, and what I'm going to do, I actually put together a short PowerPoint just to provide a context for why I'm here, talking about Dorothy in New York, what that was, and then I guess after that we could just have conversations about that.
That sounds great. Yes, those years, 2 years in New York, something of a bit of a legend, I think, of exactly what happened there. And there are some videos online, aren't there, of they give you a
Yeah,
flavor at least, but you'll be talking about that, I know.
yeah. I mean, so sometimes when I reflect back on the two summers that she was here, I kind of get them mixed up with each other because um, I was I was her assistant, Dorothy's assistant, but I was also sort of the producer of it. So I had to make sure that the schools were happy and the kids, the chaperones, the graduate students in the room, Dorothy, of course. I had to help her with the first year, her daughter Marianne came with her. And then the second year, her daughter and her daughter's husband and their child, so Cecily's granddaughter, also came. And so it was a lot of different hats that I was wearing happily, but yeah, sometimes I get my years mixed up a little bit. But I think with this PowerPoint, I'm only sort of realizing now after I've done it that I kind of focus more on the first year, which is 2006. But the 2007 is the one that sort of ended famously with blowing up the drama, which we can talk about if you don't know what that means. So what do you think, David? Should I show that, or do you want to ask me a question? Or
No, yeah, I'm really interested to know what happened in those 2 years. So yeah, let's get going with the PowerPoint.
here we go. So Dorothy spent the summers of 2006 and 2007 at NYU teaching intensive day-long workshops with middle school students and NYU graduate students watching, about 40 of them. She taught from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. in the morning with the kids. That she worked with the kids in the morning, then took a half-hour break for lunch. That's all she wanted, half an hour, no more, because she wants to get back to work. Then from 12:30 to 3, worked with the graduate students and kind of broke down what happened in the morning sessions and sort of planned out loud with the graduate students on a number of those days. Um, I served as their teaching assistant, and the 2006 work was documented on a video for the purposes of creating an educational video in the tradition of Three Looms Waiting. Uh, so the plan was to pitch the documentary for all teachers, not just drama teachers, but this documentary never materialized for reasons I'm going to discuss in this PowerPoint. But some sections of it, small sections of it, have endured on the internet in a series of clips called Becoming a Teacher, Making Matters Matter. And if I can go, all right, I don't know how to do as I'm in this, I was going to put the link in the chat, but I don't know how to do it while this PowerPoint's going on. So we'll do that after. Just remind me, I have it ready to go. So Dorothy's trip to NYC in the summer of 2006 was the first time in 20 years that she had traveled to the United States. To obtain her visa, she needed to create a CV, which was apparently the first she had ever written in her life. I believe her daughter Marianne helped her with this. And as I said, Marianne accompanied her to New York in 2006 and then brought her husband and daughter along in 2007. Prior to coming to the United States, just before she came here, NYU students were studying in London, and they had the opportunity to experience a one-day, 6-hour workshop with Dorothy. Here's the poster for that, which was also an event to launch Structure and Spontaneity, the wonderful book about the work of Cecily O'Neill. After the workshop, she shared some of her upcoming plans to work with the young people in New York on the topic of immigration. Though those plans changed primarily because of the video cameras that we used back in New York. But what she did share with the students in London was that she was going to begin with the young people by having the kids create family groups. However, given that there were 3 cameras and cameramen recording the session, Dorothy used this factor, the fact that there were cameras there, in creating the drama world. The family roles that she referred to in the earlier interview were changed and actualized by putting the young people in role as documentary filmmakers. So with cameras all around, it felt right, I think, to her. It certainly felt right to the kids. In groups, the young people were asked to create the office plans for a movie production company that they were to be in charge of. They were asked to do this on large poster paper. As documentary filmmakers still deciding on what their film would be about, Dorothy asked students to consider the implications of power in their films, while simultaneously demonstrating teacher and role to the observing graduate students. So this clip, I'm not going to show because I don't think in this format that the sound will travel right. But this is one of the 5 clips. And I think this one's the best one. I think it's called Just Teacher and Role. It's not great though. And the reason why is because we mic'd Dorothy. And there's a lot of scraping. I'm telling you all the bad stuff that happened. And then we had a boom mic for the kids. Well, that boom mic wasn't good enough. You can't just do that. You have to mic all the kids or whatever kids are being. So it's hard to hear, for example, the young person that she talks to here. But if you watch it online, you can turn it up and lean in a little to your computer and you'll hear it just fine. Here, let me just check these notes. So yeah, so eventually the students, well, first of all, they were really engaged in this process of being documentary filmmakers. They loved the idea. Let me make sure I'm on the right slide here. Yeah. But somewhere along the way, she decided to let go of these documentary filmmaker roles to focus instead on becoming members of a commission group who offer advice to schools on topics they had been exploring in their documentary. So the students came up with these groups: a commission on immigration, a commission on global warming, a commission on animal cruelty, a commission on alternative fuels, and finally, a commission on AIDS prevention. So afterwards, while there were mostly positive reflections shared about the week-long experience from the young people, some of them expressed that they had wished they could have stuck with the documentary filmmaking role. Just that. But again, I think it's important to recognize that Dorothy was also trying to demonstrate to the graduate students different strategies, conventions, approaches, ways in to the drama, places that it can go, and all kinds of possibilities. And therefore, she's basically trying to make, I think in her mind, a lot of people happy. And she made us all happy ultimately. But I mean, it's just an interesting observation. And then were the cameras to contend with they were also in the room, and they impacted certainly the kids, right, watching, um, having being watched by all the adults like in a fishbowl, but also having those cameras and kind of playing up for the cameras, I think. Um, so in an earlier interview, she talked about working on Three Looms Waiting, which I thought was kind of interesting. Maybe I'll just, this is 30 seconds. If you can hear it, great. And if not, it's only 30 seconds long.
And then, of course, the BBC cameramen. The cameramen who had this amazing business of wide vision but recognition of significance. And I've had a lot of cameramen. I ignore them, of course, when I'm working. But I don't ignore, I know where they are. And of course, you knew better when they had the big BBC stuff that was so heavy.
So while Dorothy had learned to ignore the BBC cameras, I doubt the same could be said for the young people. It's hard enough to do drama in front of like 40 pairs of adult eyes watching their every move, but with video release forms signed and 3 cameras and cameramen present, how could this chance to star in a documentary not alter the ways that the young people approached and engaged in the work? Likewise, in written reflections, both in 2006 and 2007, some graduate students took issue with the ways in which their classmates responded to the work throughout the week. Like one said, I cannot help wonder if the people observing and laughing were egging the boys on. And in year 2, that was something that was a concern for these boys who kind of blew up the drama at the end. Another student said, we all laughed at the ridiculousness and were in effect just supporting their behavior. So hearing that laughter also impacts everything about everything that's done. Heathcote called this self-indulgent on the part of the adult observers, seeing the work from the outside rather than the inside, and therefore letting themselves be entertained by it. Many of the young people reflected that through this work, they had a better understanding of the power dynamics at play in different situations. And they found that useful in their acting. And that was something they actually cared a great deal about. They were performing arts school. So it was good in that sense. They enjoyed working on all of this, and they enjoyed being able to critically evaluate various scenarios and incidents. This it's pretty well documented. Dorothy's highly detailed and methodical in her approach toward planning a drama experience. So prior to her arrival, for example, she had to make copies of numerous materials, whether it be wills, other documents, had to make them look old by crumpling them up and maybe sending them on fire. I had to get chains. I had to get a bunch of things that most weren't used in the end because she decided she didn't need to. So it's well documented that she's kind of like that. But yeah, this is standard when participants' differing interests and personalities influence how the structure evolves, obviously. In both 2006 and 2007, while most graduate students found her strategies useful for their own practice, when asked to think about their own educational settings, some were concerned that they couldn't get buy-in from their administrators to spend so much time exploring what they perceived to be side tasks to the main curriculum objectives. Some of these same graduate students also wanted Heathcote to clearly articulate to the young people what she was asking them to do and why. For them, for these graduate students, there was a desire that Heathcote's that she work more quickly and always remind the students what the outcomes should be. To me, it seems these teachers felt the need to focus on what's happening next as opposed to what's happening now in the classroom. An attitude, I think, appears to have emerged from the model of teacher as expert rather than a partnership model between teachers and students to construct an imaginary world of reflection on action. And I think this is not really surprising given the emphasis on testing and outcomes in the United States. So the original plan was to condense Heathcote's 30 hours of teaching into 55 minutes of footage that demonstrated and explained her teaching methods. Though it's not surprising that her work was complex and multifaceted, creating a simple narrative intended for an audience of general classroom teachers as opposed to drama teachers only became more difficult than anticipated, particularly when technical issues emerged. In the end, the biggest reason why the 30 hours of footage was not used was due to the very simple but key technical need: audio microphones. Microphones weren't good. The wireless mic that Dorothy used cut in and out, scraped against her clothes, and made an unpleasant sound for a good chunk of what we captured. And worst of all, as first-time documentary filmmakers, we neglected to mic the kids. We tried a boom mic, as I said, but that didn't work properly either. Dorothy talked about reading the social behavior of the group, stressing that teachers need to be flexible and adjust their curriculum towards the needs of the students. She also highlighted how important it is to make drama a special time and take students out of the casual. Further, she emphasized that drama is both spontaneous action and its consequences, and that optimal dramatic learning occurs when an individual is able to take responsibility for creating an action, and that creating an action that has consequences. And so I toyed around with the idea of finishing with some of these clips, these short clips, but given that it didn't work so well, I think I'll leave it there, and you can watch on your own. As soon as I stop sharing this screen, I will. But these are the clips that I would have shown. I'll probably show this to my drama and ed class in a couple weeks. All right, so escape. Okay. Now I'm right now, while I'm thinking of it, I'm putting in the chat the link to these clips. So there you go.
Thank you for that, David. Thank you very much for that overview. Would you say, I was really interested in the reaction of these graduate students back then in 2006 and 7, obviously looking for a very different model of drama and of teaching. And would you say that there's space? They were saying, will our administrators buy into this if we try and do this? Would you say there's space for Dorothy's kind of work in American education system as it stands?
It's very easy to say, for someone to say no to that question, because they are given so much to do, and their curriculum areas to address they're supposed to hit. But having said that, I think the answer is that there is space. I think you have to find and make it, and you have to learn how to play with whatever school routines or rules there are, because at the end of the day, when you close the door, it's you and the students. And there are ways, particularly actually with Dorothy's Mantle of the Expert work, to address lots of areas of the curriculum through that work, through those strategies and conventions. So I think it's a little bit of a cop-out. It's kind of understandable, but a little bit of a cop-out as well to say, I can't do this. My administrator, well, how do you know? Have you actually tried it? Maybe they will buy into it.
Do you see it being used? Is it being used by teachers, or how much is there an awareness of, say, Mantle of the Expert? among
There is less awareness of Mantle of the Expert than process drama. But even having said that, there's not that much drama education that's process oriented happening overall. I do personally know some people doing it because they graduated from our program. They've studied with people who do Dorothy's work or in their own way, but people who promote her and teach about her work. So yeah, I certainly know some people who are doing elements and even elements of Mantle of the Expert with their students. Yeah.
So what was coming through in what you were saying was very much about this power shift. And you were saying that's one of the things that you've been left with from working with Dorothy is the idea of sharing power with the children. And that seemed maybe was something that your graduate students at that time were surprised by, maybe.
They absolutely were surprised by it. And actually, I get that now, even without seeing Dorothy. When I start to talk about this work, it's not just sort of a quick, oh, okay, that makes sense. There's very much sometimes a reluctance to fully dive in. They're coming in looking for a class. I teach a class called Drama and Education. And a lot of times they're coming in, they want to know more about how do you cast plays? What scenes do you use? And I don't even go near that until later in the semester. I'll start to talk about some of those things. But so early on, there's usually a lot of, well, this is not what we did. This is not what a drama teacher does. I'm generalizing. Many people don't do that, but there is a feeling. And so there is I think, a nice transformation that usually happens, not always, where at the very least, students start to see this idea of sharing power and activating the ideas of students dramatically, and trying to, provide a sense of ownership that for the students, or having the students feel ownership of the work and care about what they're doing. So yeah, I don't know if I
Yeah.
answered. Did I? Yeah.
Yeah, it's something Dorothy said once, if you can't take the power shift, get out of the kitchen or get out of the classroom, I guess, because it's
Yes.
so fundamental. And it is something that teachers, I know I've done some teaching with teachers in India. Vaishali and Vishaka can confirm this, that I've heard them say, oh, well, teachers we work with sometimes say, why should we share power with the children? It is that kind of shift, in that mindset that is there in teachers, I think.
Yeah.
I know,
Yeah.
Theo, I can see you eating. I don't know if this is a good moment, but what David was saying, does this chime with your experiences of the attitudes that students come with? Because you do teacher education in London, don't you?
I think it's complicated because it's to do with the teacher's purposes. So, and also their experience of drama in schools themselves. I think that's a big factor. So I often start with I'll do some history and do the haunted house, Leslie's haunted house. And they remember it. Some of them remember it. They did it, or they know, or they recognize that way of working, and they remember what it was like, what it involved, and how it kind of addressed them as learners. And that really helps. But also at the moment in schools in England, it's very narrow, the curriculum. The GCSE assessment is all about actor training. It's hopeless, so we've got to get rid of that. But I was just talking to somebody this afternoon who's a primary teacher, and really thinking about how, well, much of my kind of orientation towards drama for learning is probably more relevant to that cross-curricular work that you can do with younger students. So it's complicated. It's complicated by the teacher's purposes, I think, mainly. Where you find yourself, with which students, what you want them to learn and how.
Yes.
One of the things I feel about Dorothy's work When I look at a video, like there's a video of her working in New Zealand, 1978. I might be wrong about that, but it's Sanctuary, it's called. And it's really kind of early Mantle of the Expert, where she has a group of young people who say, we want to do a drama about a young people who are runaways from home and they want to set up their own community. And so they set up, it becomes called a sanctuary where they are in control and they are making the decisions. And it seems to me that that is partly what the appeal of Mantle of the Expert is to young people, that it's giving them the authority to run something themselves, to create their own world. And I think one of the things about Mantle of the Expert is that it is, in part, it's about creating a kind of ideal community where we are working together as a team and we have our core values as a team. Now, when we talk about year two in New York, so 2007, we have a situation where it seems to me, because Yona and I, we went to see Dorothy, as I was telling you earlier. I think it was shortly after she came back from New York, because we went to her house and she told us about what had happened that summer in New York, because it really stuck with her. And I know Cecily's written about it as well. Here it seemed to me she was creating one of these ideal communities of people coming together to work together. And it climaxed in a ritual, but then something went wrong, I guess you'd say. Do you want to just explain what that drama was all about?
Yeah, it had to do with setting up and running a vineyard and having people as apply for jobs and get jobs and there's all kinds of things that happened that week. But at the very end, the young people working together to create a ceremony that would symbolize their agreement to collaborate on restoring the vineyard. So each family was like given a stone where they could write their names, and they were formally placed in the center of the community ground. I'm happy that Cecily O'Neill shared with me some of her speech because she talked about it so well. I'm kind of referring to it now. So they each person will receive a box with a slip of a vine to plant, a symbol of this new growth. Well, it seemingly everyone was really invested in it. The kids, the adults. It was like kind of a perfect capper final activity to the week. So, however, when the ceremony was over, there's three boys that they were hanging out together all week, and they were testing Dorothy quite a bit. Suddenly, one of the boys yelled, "Boom! We blew you up. There were bombs in the boxes, and now you're all dead." And it was this crazy, tense moment after that. I mean, people were kind of shocked. And that was their goal. I believe that was the goal that the kids had. But her response was, Dorothy's response was, you just now echoed an interview that I heard on the radio this very day with a young Muslim radical who said, "I will kill when the mullah tells me. I will be the will of Allah. I do not care who will die." And then she said, "There's nothing we do in this room that isn't happening somewhere in the world." So she continued to endow what was happening in the room with significance. She didn't really give into it as being silly, those choices. She just really had the students or allowed them to be responsible for their choices. Now, the reaction to that from some of the adults was also fascinating. Some thought it was amazing that she would treat it this way. Others were like, I would have broken those kids up earlier in the week. I don't know why she didn't notice that. Or those kids should be disciplined. They ruined it for everybody else. Which, probably a lot of teachers would respond that way. but it was a brilliant demonstration. In some ways, it was like a really good thing that happened in the end because of this, because we can talk about this, because people are always worried. Drama teachers are always worried about what's going to derail the drama, what kind of silliness might occur, or what there might be some students who don't take it seriously. And she demonstrated maybe the worst derailment I've ever seen at the very end, and honored it. And the kids didn't need to be scolded. They felt responsible. They felt responsible for what they had done, the choice that they made. Excuse me. Drink.
Yeah, I think she said that she could see, they recognized, they got the sense of this negative reaction in the room. They knew that they had made a mistake. I don't know
That's
if
the line.
Cecily, I don't know if you would be willing to come in at this point just to say, because I know you made some observations on this, because you had access to her journal that she wrote at the time, and you had some observations yourself on this moment and what Dorothy chose to do. As David says, he chose to honor them. Are you there, Cecily?
So Cecily, you're muted.
Okay, that okay?
Yes, thanks, Cecily.
To me, it was an extraordinary example of her power and her capacity as a teacher. How many of us would have been able to almost in an instant draw from something in her immediate experience, listening to the radio show, and feeding that in to this, the worst, thing that could have happened, the worst blow up, as it were, and to suddenly give the whole thing an enormous significance in the real world. The vineyard, the ideal world that she was hoping to create, which has been slightly undermined by the boys pretending to be from the mafia and so on, but which has hung together through the other kids and the graduate students. And then to find the kind of springboard from that awful moment that most of us would feel if it was our class, and enlarge it and make it something of much, much, much more powerful. And I think it's a perfect example to me of why we honor Dorothy so much, that she has those capacities. And please God, let us have them. Me, anybody, to do that is just, I thought, just sums up her skill as a teacher and her depth and wisdom and power as a person as well.
I think you're right, yes, to rescue it. She rescued it at that moment and she honored she made something of it. Whereas if she'd simply told them off, that would have been, what would have been the point really in the end of just telling them off?
Yeah.
So I'm wondering really maybe if we can open this up for some other people to come in with questions or comments. You're welcome to unmute yourself if you have a question or a comment for David. I know we talked, David, about whether it's left a legacy in your practice, your personal practice in working with Dorothy, and in terms of sharing power, but in other ways maybe perhaps as well.
Yeah, I mean, the example, again, blowing up the drama, for lack of a better title, was a huge learning moment for me. What collaboration actually looks like when it's going well. These are the things I learned from Dorothy. Also, very flexible, Dorothy. I mean, she kind of, at one point she came in, so in the afternoon she's telling more, she's kind of letting the graduate students in on her planning process. And she comes in and says, well, I had a great plan for this morning. And then about 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up and I thought it is a ridiculously stupid plan. And so I scrapped the whole thing and I came up with the plan you saw this morning. And I think that, and so also that she had me prepare all these materials that she didn't use. She taught me the importance of preparing and the importance of letting go based on what happens with the young people or with whomever you're working with, and to continually be planning and thinking about the work in that way. I mean, there's so many other things, just in the way she talks to people and listens and offers questions that I took away as well, just in like delivery. So she changed, in essence, kind of everything about the way I think about teaching back then. She didn't necessarily change my thoughts that summer, those summers, because I had already learned so much about her. I was so impacted by Three Looms Waiting the first time I saw it. I mean, I cried. I couldn't believe it. I was like, this is it. That was probably more like 1999 or something, but then, yeah, being able and just being able to be with her every day. We did have a lot of fun. We had laughs. She's a character, like a great one. Like, she really didn't want long breaks. She said, why have a lunch break? Like, I think, can we just do 30 minutes so that we can have a break? Okay. So she worked. Oh, and then she would, at 4, I guess they were done at 3, but then she'd have one-on-one tutorials till 5. So she was such a hard worker. I think I took that away as well. Such a hard worker, which is really impressive. Very, just so committed and passionate about the work. It's truly inspiring.
Yeah, and you said that she came in with one plan to do something, and then when she saw the cameras, she changed it all.
Well, yeah, overall she did that. Yeah, yeah.
Because she was responding to she realized, I suppose, that she couldn't ignore those cameras that were there. That was going to be part of the dynamic of the event.
Exactly.
She
Yeah.
decided to incorporate that into
Yeah.
the event.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So if we can open it up, and if somebody's got a question for David.
Margaret.
So a quotation that you said, David, not sure if these were Dorothy's words, but it fascinates me when she said, take drama out of the casual. So interrogating what that actually means. And for me as a drama teacher, I always find that a really difficult balance, because you want drama to be a different kind of space for the students, but you still want them to work really hard and to take the work seriously. Because I think sometimes students come and they just think it's playtime and they don't have to try very hard. So I'm wondering what everyone thinks about that sense of taking it out of the casual, what that actually looks like. Does that mean we only deal with serious topics in drama? I don't know. What do people think by that word casual?
It's also, there's a quote, isn't there, in one of the videos? I used it today in the Facebook post. She says, making matters matter. Drama should be about making matters matter. So what do you think, David? What do you think she means by this?
I think she means, I don't think that means serious necessarily, or serious topics. I think it means being fully engaged, really, just fully in that, trying to make it feel that everything we're doing in this space at this time is important. And it can be fun, and it could be laughter, or it could be serious, but it's fully engaging. And I think casual implies, you maybe half paying attention. I don't know, but that's sort of what I take away from that. It's not the same. And that's what I love about, when we talk about teacher and role, I tell students, well, I'll demonstrate a teacher and role to talk about something in role. And and I'll be like, well, we easily could have just had the same discussion without me taking the role. But by putting on the role, it takes us out of the casual and into a heightened world a little bit. So I think that's what it means for me anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, I think she said something about, again, I quoted this on Facebook the other day. You'll get to a position, hopefully, in teaching where there's nothing in the classroom that doesn't matter in that sense. Yona, I think you wanted to come in.
Well, I was going to say, in response to Margaret's point, that I think it's to do with the responsibility, really, and taking responsibility for something. And as David says, it's about what matters. They've got to care about it. It's got to matter to them. And I feel that Mount of the Expert, which came probably later than Process Drama, and then Commission Model, which was the final model she created, was very much about taking responsibility and seeing through, and being in charge of kind of consequence of what happens in commission as well, because it's a real life, process in a sense. So I was thinking that maybe that's what I mean by it not being casual.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in Mantle of the Expert, having the client made it matter more. And I think the commission made it matter even more than that. So that was my response to that. But I did have another question, but shall I come back to it later if we're still discussing this?
Okay, let's hold it for a second then, because I think it's right that it's a case of, I think she saw that a lot of education, a lot of what happens in the classroom, kids are not interested. They don't care. And I think that what you're saying, that's it. Yes, it's about caring. She wanted to have things happening in the classroom, drama or otherwise, that the kids would care about. Did anyone else want to come in on this point about what is meant by everything matters? Everything should matter.
Theo does.
Theo, yeah?
Yeah, I was just thinking about the end of Gavin Bolton's book about acting in classroom drama, and he says exactly as you said, Iona, about responsibility being the defining feature of taking on a role, and how I've always had that. I've always thought responsibility. I've always been sort of teasing that out, trying to understand what that means. But yeah, I think it's for things matter. And because it matters, you do have a weighty sense of your part in the fiction making, as well as in, I suppose, commission module is more real life. But if you're making fiction together, then you have a responsibility for weaving that, as well as for, the role. Well, that is role taking in his terms. It's complex, isn't it? But also, I think with Dorothy, like just what you said, David, about the sense that we bring all our resources of our body to sign, to make meaning, and we're just much more conscious of reading what's going on, reading the room, which is part of that responsibility for weaving the fiction together or the drama together. So it's really thank you for helping me make these connections. I suppose that's what Heathcote's about, isn't it? She was always making connections to help us see further.
Yona, you said you had another question. Do you want to bring that in now?
Well, I was just thinking, David, earlier on you said that they're graduate students. Were they graduate teacher students, and they were particularly drama? Were they drama students?
They were. Again, I feel a little badly, as if I'm generalizing a large chunk of people, and it wasn't, but there was certainly more than one or two, right? But yeah, almost all of them were either teachers, getting their masters, or training to be future teachers.
Because you said, go on. You were just saying that they wanted Heathcote to articulate more clearly what she was doing and why she was doing it. And I wondered, maybe it's too long ago, but I wondered if you could kind of remember or consider, what was it that they wanted to know the what of, and what was it they wanted to know the why of? If you have any in your head.
Yeah, no, I think what it is she do something, and because the teachers can't see what's coming up next or what's down the road, they wanted her to say, we're doing this because, and then after this, we're going to do this.
I
and
see.
then we're going to do this other thing, um, and then you will be assessed on that. Not that assessment was never really a part of this, but I think that's where the teachers are coming from. That's the background that they have. Some of the teachers who had issues with it. And that's what a lot of teachers are taught, let's start the well, you see it in a classroom. They'll say, so today we're going to do, and they have the chart. We're going to do this, and you're going to do group work, and then we're going to reflect, and the class is over. And that is not the way Dorothy works. And that's really not the way I work. Or a lot of people, I mean, I think there's a place for that once in a while, but it's not, it's what teachers are used to. And also, as somebody said, Theo, I think Margaret, like, it's how they're trained also as students, how their schooling was, right? So I think somebody was talking about on my first day of class, I usually talk about teachers, I want to know from my students what their good and bad teacher experiences are, and kind of go in that way.
Interesting. So did she ever reflect with them about what her pedagogy and what she was trying to achieve? I mean, I just wondered if they had the opportunity for that kind of reflection. And maybe they didn't. I don't know.
I did. The thing is some, yes, the class ended, and a lot of us talked about it for not just weeks, but years, and still talk about it, obviously.
Okay.
But not everyone, and some of the stuff I learned because I would read their journals about it. And I would just, write comments like, well, think about this, or some, not maybe as much as there could have been if it was it was 1 week class. If it was, full semester, certainly, or just longer.
Yeah. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's one of those things I think you have to. Well, Dorothy would start when she was talking to teachers, she'd start by saying, well, what is your paradigm of the child? How do you see the child? Because how you see the child is how you will teach. So it really is a case of, when there might be resistance sometimes to Dorothy's way of working, it really goes back to the view that people have of children and of education, doesn't it? Because she's offering such a different model. So we've maybe got time for another question. Have we got a question from somebody? This is now your chance.
Charlie.
Vaishali. Hi, Vaishali.
Hi.
Hi, Vaishali.
Hi, David. Thank you for sharing that beautiful story of how she managed those 3 boys. It's just a comment that I would like to make. And I feel the more I hear about her and the more I attend David's seminars, the more I research about her, I feel that I think it's this innate need to regard a young person's action and thought, which is at the center of what Dorothy wanted to do always regard what young people think and what they do, and not discount anything that comes from them, but take it as a response, a physical response to something that has happened in the brain, in the mind, due to something. So I think that that answers everything what she does in the class. Everything that goes wrong or right in a class comes to this regarding the young. And that's extremely powerful. And the second thing that you mentioned, David, about, and I think Neona was also mentioning about teachers, talking about what's next and then next. I think it comes from this whole attitude of working to create prior knowledge for children in the next class. It happens because of that, because the teacher is constantly creating prior knowledge for her students for the next class, so that her life becomes easy. So, so it's not to blame anybody, but it's just that it's just to make my life easy. I'll ensure that tomorrow when I come back to my class, I'm sure that my children know this, so that I can go ahead with my work and I can finish what I want to do in this year. So I think because the teachers are constantly trying to create prior knowledge for their children in the next class, so they're always living in the future while children are in the now. And I think that's the reason that this happened. But thank you so much, David, for this, and thank you, David Allen, for this as well. Both the Davids.
Thank you. And thank you for those comments. I never really thought about the prior knowledge and as being a culprit to some of this sort of thinking ahead as opposed to being in the moment. That's an interesting comment. I think, David, if it's okay, I see William Barlow.
Yeah, I see Will's hand up. So let's go over to Will. Yeah.
Let's get one more.
Hey,
Hey,
Where are you?
hi.
Are you on a train or something?
no, I'm home now. I'm just
Okay.
I'm just back from teaching all day in Aberdeen. Yeah, I'm a bit tired. David, David M. Thank you so much, buddy. I really do appreciate you doing that for us. That's really kind of you.
Thanks, Will.
I think let's just go back to something that was spoken about earlier on. I think that I think we are all generally of the opinion that Dorothy's work is excellent and we should be doing it and all the rest of it. And I don't think anyone's going to argue too much about that. I think the problem here is that although teachers find it, why is it not being used more in classrooms, not only in Scotland or in England, but in America? Why is it not being done? And then you need to start thinking about it. What is it because of that teachers haven't experienced it, like what Theo was saying, their own education that they've had? Why is that voice? Why is that approach? Why is a more hornbroken approach being taken in education systems for drama, particularly at secondary level in schools? Is it because of attainment? Is it because of assessment processes that then creates, it can be, and I'm going to use a positivist term here, it gives greater validity to almost do like an end on fourth wall, and it's easier, again I'm using the metaphorical quotation marks there, for teachers to assess. And equally we think about it in policy documentations for secondary school drama education. Not really, you could even argue particular elements of primary school education as well, but it's always focusing on the notion of, and I'll use this term loosely, of product as well, and because it gives skills for others as opposed to skills for self in this narrowstic viewpoint. And then, so I suppose my question is, I mean, the point that you were looking at about learning intention, success criteria, all the rest of it, the kind of neoliberal approach, a sanitizing of education. Everything has to be the same all the time in classrooms. In drama, all drama has to be the same. That's not real drama unless there's a fourth wall and all the rest of it. So I wonder why that policy people in power, policy people are making curriculum. Again, not just in Scotland, not just in Europe, also in America. Why is Dorothy's approaches not being the main spearhead for this? Why is it that we've gone into this kind of, sorry, Heather's just deciding to join in the conversation. Why is it going into a more, why hasn't it taken off as much as one would have hoped to?
I don't have an answer for that, other than I think you just pointed out all the reasons why, or the excuses that that are out there. You know, that schools are they want. I see a lot of people leaving. That this is what is promoted in schools. The standard
is it because schools are predominantly risk averse, David?
I think that's a good answer. I think that's probably true. Yeah.
I think so too.
And it looks like Cecily has a comment too.
I think it's not just the students that are risk averse. Teachers are very, very risk averse. They are afraid to, I think, and in some cases perhaps rightly so, to risk their own creativity and to start on a journey when they don't know quite what the end is. You know, and it seems to me that the curriculum, which was given to us by dear Michael Gove, whom I have never forgiven, you know, is just so arid and so antagonistic to the arts, you know, all the arts, not just drama. but drama and dance, perhaps particularly, because they're the not very serious ones. So, I think it's very hard for teachers. I don't blame them in a way, because they're caught up in, as you say, the secondary curriculum is almost entirely product driven. There's no space. The only space is something like devising. But
None.
devising what and for whom, and using what?
Yeah.
How is that?
I don't know if you. I totally agree. It's like you. I don't think you heard me there. I didn't just say that students were risk averse. I was saying schools in general were risk averse. Which, yeah, no, I totally get that. Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think it's devising is a whole other. It's this.
And yet,
gone.
I think of using, Dorothy's approach.
Exactly.
We have been, asked to produce a play, or whatever. There would be ways of doing that.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I think what it's about is it's not just, for me, it's not, Dorothy was about changing education. She was about changing the way people think about education. It's not just about particular drama methods. It's not just about Dorothy's work herself. It's about changing the view of learning. And that we have to be part of that. We have to be engaged with trying to shift the way people see education. And it has got much worse to me in the last 20, 30 years, at least in in England. It's different in certain areas, but it seems to be a global thing as well, that there has been this shift more and more towards a view of education as input and output. You put in the facts, as just Dorothy talked about, filling in empty vessels, didn't she? It's that model of education where children are empty vessels and you fill them full of knowledge. And that's the dominant model that we're living with, we're dealing with, and that's got to change. Tara, did you want to try again?
I don't know. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. So for me, it's not seen in the teacher training. They don't know. There isn't even barely in Ireland a drama and education module in teacher training. It's barely there. And if it is, it's going over very general conventions. Dorothy's work is so far from where these teachers are insofar as introducing arts, introducing drama in the classroom, that I feel that we need to go the whole way back. I'm at an advantage point that I'm coming to these teachers as a facilitator. So that means that all of this work is being outsourced. It's all, okay, you are the person who does drama, you come in. It's not coming from a point of view of coming down from the teacher training into the classroom at all. Does that make sense? So yeah. I know, like for myself, like Helen, you are teaching, or you've been teaching primary for many years, but you would have had a huge interest in Dorothy's work, having come from a drama background. If you don't come from a drama background, the chances of drama and education or process drama or, Dorothy's work coming into the classroom are very slim, you know, but that does not mean that the teachers are not hugely interested. So there's the gap. There's the void. There's this, like, when I speak to teachers about working, using Mantle of the Expert and using Dorothy's methods, they're like, this is amazing. I would love you to come into my classroom. How do we make that happen? So I feel that, like, we need to make that transfer somehow to, I don't know, like, obviously, like, I'm working on an early ed program. So the early ed teachers now know a bit about, they know about Mantle, whether or not they go on to use it in their practice, I don't know, but at least it's starting to sow the seeds. And I think if we have to strip it back and we have to go, okay, where can we start here? Let's go from, what we're dealing with, as opposed to going, okay, they should know more. How come they're not doing it? I don't know. Maybe I'm on a little rant, because I went to see my school's Christmas school play, my son's school play last year, and I was sitting there, and the day before the school play, he was so deflated because right up until the day he was supposed to be Jack. And he said to me, there was 4 of us supposed to be Jack for Jack and the Beanstalk. And I found out I wasn't Jack because another boy has a better reading voice than me. And my heart was broken. I was like, what? what? Someone reads louder than you, so you don't, you know, and that's just obviously coming from a parent's point of view, but it made me realize even the school play, you could work with the school play. If that's what we had to work with, let's go in and say, right, let's use some mantle to frame the children in the audition part of the school play. Let's frame them. Let's find out who they'd like to be. And if they want to be a farmer in the field, or if they want to be the beanstalk, let's give them the opportunity to do that by making that audition process be a framing process. I just think there are different ways that we can go about bringing Dorothy's work into the situation that we have now, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, that when people see it in practice or hear about it, then they do get enthused about it. They do get excited by it, and it's yes, they may well, understandably, teachers might be risk adverse, but they're also, I think, at times just crying out for something that's different because they're trapped in this system as well. They're trapped in this system of the curriculum and the demands of the things they have to, and trying to squeeze these children through the exams and cram them for the exams, which seems to be so much what the system is about.
David,
yes, Iona.
I just want to say quickly. I mean, I think it almost needs a revolution, really, in systems for Dorothy's work to prevail, and I think she felt that herself, actually. So I think you should all come to Wales, where everything is very different. Where I am now, overlooking the Preseli Mountains, and it's wonderful, but it's not all wonderful. But what I'm saying is they have changed the curriculum in Wales, and it's accommodated more of Dorothy's work.
But we want it to happen not just in Wales, Iona. We want it to
No,
happen in
I'm
England,
not saying that. I'm not saying
Scotland, you know.
Of course, but it can start somewhere, and things, as Dorothy said, often started small. And you might think of Wales as a small place, which it is, but it has big ideas. And, you know, from these small seeds, that Dorothy would call them seeds, things will grow, and Wales can lead the way. We can be an example to you. Come and have a look at what we're doing.
Absolutely.
I'm convinced.
Cecily,
already.
Cecily, yeah, you've got your hand up, Cecily.
Yes, I have. Most of my career before I went to America was in-service training after I stopped working in schools. And I just wonder, is there any in-service training going on in England right now? You know, where there is the local education authority has any responsibility for supporting teachers in schools. I don't just mean drama, but, you know, English or maths or science. Does it happen?
Chris Lawrence, you've got your hand up, yeah?
Yeah, Cecily, the professional associations.
Exactly. That I know. I know all the work you're doing. But nothing.
What has happened with it's been redefined, like everything else in education. It's become an industrial model.
Oh God!
Actual McDonald's is the model that they're using for education. Teachers need to deliver a curriculum like you would deliver a pizza across the county. You see, that's the model they've got because it works in industry. What you've got in education at the moment, as far as continuing professional development, is because particularly with the new structures in in schools with these academies, continual professional education is dictated rather than applied for. And it's to do with the latest diktat or project that the academy or the government has, said that schools had to be concerned about. Then teachers devote themselves to learning all about what is dictated. Whereas in the old days, when I started teaching, it was you continue professional development was doing things that developed you. It was definitely development of me because it's things I was interested in, supplied by people who were also interested in the things I was interested in. and wanted to encourage me into those things. But that's been completely redefined.
So inset days then are just follow the sort of model that you've described, where every so often, beginning of term or whatever, there is an inset day where the teachers get presumably professional development along the lines you've said.
They're information receiving days.
Oh God.
That's what they are. And that teachers say that is continual professional development. It's like being devised, and they're in the habit of thinking that way, so they don't question it, because that's all they know is we've got to learn this. And unless we do, we can't develop professionally. We can't be approved for the next level of education. It's complete, industrialization of education, which is why the students were saying, "Can you work quicker?" to Dorothy, yeah. And can you give us the objectives? Because
yes,
in their heads that was education, whereas what she was saying completely contradicting that. So it raises the question: if what schools are doing is that style that the students were saying, and Dorothy was saying, no, this is education, then what are they doing? They're not engaged in education at all. They're engaged in something else, like a process that is not educational, basically.
Well, Dorothy would always slow things down, and she knew that people watching her would feel that it was going really slowly, but she was looking for that depth. Theo, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, I suppose with Dorothy as well, she was getting to know the students, wasn't she? And that was absolutely key. She comes in to meet a new group. But what I was going to say was, yeah, when I first started teaching, we had drama advisors, and that was part of the local education authority. And there was a kind of network alongside the subject associations, and we had more time as well for that kind of thing that you were talking about, Cecily. And now it is, as Chris was saying, it's much more isolated, and academy trusts do their own thing. And so even as a teacher educator running a PGCE, we can't get student placements in some academy trusts because they've kind of worked out their whole, Harris make Harris teachers, and ARC make ARC teachers. And that's, so it is, as Chris was saying, it's a kind of commodification. But on the plus side, there is places like Woodrow First School and Mantle of the Expert network, and there are possibilities for people to pay and go and learn how to do, and they could come to the conference, of course.
Good, thank you, Theo, for that plug. Will, yeah, I think we'll probably have to wrap it up in a minute, but Will.
Yeah, sorry. It was just another thing I wanted to raise. I mean, I think there's obviously a difference between schooling and education as well, which Theo also mindful. But I think as well, which we've not discussed today, is like those with power, particularly policymakers with power. And then we then think about school teachers. And then, as I think it was Brunner said, that school teachers aren't there to enact aren't just there to enact government policy, or only there to enact government policy. But what we are finding in Scotland right now, with the cuts that have happened in education, I think, Chris, this is like kind of what you were talking about earlier on, but what an undesirable consequence of that is that those who work, we only have one exam board in Scotland, the Scottish Qualifications Authority, and this is an important point. It means, therefore, that those who are drama teachers who are employed by the SQA, our monopolised examination board, then have a view of what theatre drama is in Scotland, and then they're the ones, because we've not got local authority and service days and all the rest of it, and we're very few of it, they then come out and they say, well, this is what theatre is and this is what you now need to teach. That will not be acceptable for the SQA. So it becomes this endpoint of examination process all the time. So there's no opportunity for teachers to deviate from that mantra from the actual top budget. So teachers themselves in secondary education are following that particular model because that's all they know. And by default, that then gets disseminated down into the classroom. So they need to follow that process, otherwise their children won't get the attainment grades. So it becomes a silo of restraint potentially. So I think that's also important. We need to acknowledge as well within that. It's not that teachers don't want to. It's just that we've actually created a system where those with a select few power are actually having a massive sway now on how drama is perceived within the classroom.
Yeah, and I think it's been set up like that, on purposefully controlled, concentrated like that. David, final thoughts perhaps from you?
Well, my final thought is that I actually really I wasn't sure what this format would be, and I love that it was just Zoom so that everybody could see each other and talk, and that it wasn't. I don't want all the power and just share my story. I want to hear how it lands with you, or what you're taking away. So I'm thinking my final thought is that this conference is going to be great, and just that this whole event that you're set up, David, is great, and then there's more to come, I understand. So I'm excited to watch that or participate in that.